Yeah, so I was asked to sit on the panel here because I sort of have a unique perspective. So two things: I am a chief building official, and also I'm also building an electric home, all electric home right now. In the middle of it, we're at frame. We're actually putting in the utilities on the home, and so I wanted to sort of share my perspective as a building official here in Napa County, and then also kind of what we're going through with the build of a house. So if you could go to the next slide. So I'd start out. So just on the building department side, we have seen obviously a huge increase in permit activity related to these electrical systems that are related to resiliency, photovoltaic, and energy storage systems. That's a big part. It's, as you can see, it's almost 23% of our permitting entails that. We actually have pretty much a full-time person that handles these types of permits, plan checks them. So they've become obviously a big part of what we do on a daily basis. But we've seen that as a result of a couple of things. Code changes have changed over the years. The last code cycle, the state really pushed electric ready homes, which is, sort of the precursor to phasing out fossil fuel and gas systems. This sort of happened with the photovoltaics. You were supposed to be photovoltaic ready, so you could simply switch over. In the earlier codes, I think the 2016 code started that. And then 2019 brought in the requirement of having photovoltaics on all new construction. So same thing. We're also seeing REACH codes. A lot of jurisdictions in the Bay Area and the state have adopted REACH codes to go beyond what the state is requiring. And those range from all electric homes to even change outs that are to be electric. So with this code change, this last 2021 code, we are supposed to be electric ready, which means you're running your electrical lines to those locations, like your water heater and laundry room, and where you can simply switch over to electrical when you go to change out your appliances. The other thing we're seeing is grid tied versus off grid. We're seeing an increased number of applicants interested in off grid, where they're completely tied off. In our rural areas where there aren't services such as PG&E, or the cost of bringing the PG&E to those locations is very expensive. So we're seeing those systems. Those can present a challenge for a building official. How long, if you're going to design the system, how long can a person or a property last on off grid? We have health and safety codes that require you to have electricity, water, hot water, and those things need to be maintained in order to occupy a home. So that is typically what we look at as a 72-hour system that would supply that. If you go to the next slide. So I just wanted to back up a little bit. So as far as here in Napa, we've experienced some pretty significant destructive issues over the years. Fires, we had 2017, and correction on the slide there, it's 2020. We had two major fire events. Each of them, we lost thousands of structures. So we spent, I think when we were kind of finishing up with the last of the 2017, in came the 2020. So it's been quite a challenge. And then we had a pretty significant earthquake in 2014. And then we have PSPs that have really sort of driven this resiliency forward to make sure that people have power when they need it, when the PG&E is shut down. So huge impact to this county, and it's really shifted how we do things, how we permit, and it's, those services we're looking for resiliency in those services. So energy independence, and as I mentioned before, there's that 72-hour, you really want to be prepared for that when you go off grid, or you're not able to get your PG&E supply to last 72 hours, because as we've seen with some of these fires, services get overtaxed, PG&E gets overtaxed, and you may not see things restored, as the gentleman from San Francisco said earlier. Maybe months before you would be able to restore your gas lines, because those are a huge impact in the infrastructure. If you could go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk about, I am currently building a home with my wife and I. We are owner builder, doing the project, managing the project ourselves. We decided to go all electric, mainly because of the resiliency features. Obviously, greener climate, climate friendly is what we wanted. Less dependent on the fossil fuels, which is gas. The project we have is located in a rural part of the Napa County. So what people do is they go with LP, liquid propane gas tanks. It's an additional utility service. That's just one simple thing. You have to have that serviced on a regular basis. And then they are a fire hazard as far as I'm concerned. When we went through the fires of 2020 and 2017, that was a huge part of the cleanup, was these propane tanks that were all over, thousands of them that had to be decommissioned if they weren't already from the fire, and dealt with. So it was a better option it's a better option for us to rely on the electrical. And then costs, there's some advantages to going electric. The newer tech is more expensive on the front end, but on the back end, it pays for itself, right? And your energy efficiency and your ability to just rely on it during events and when PG&E is not available. If you could go to the next slide, and I'll kind of wrap it up. So this is just a list of what we've incorporated into the home or plan to. Obviously, heat pump technology is really advanced now and a wonderful. So we do have that in our plans. A water heater, doing our heating and air with that. Appliances, heat pump, dryer are now becoming available in the market. Obviously, roof mount photovoltaic induction stoves, which are actually a really nice way to cook. And then, of course, incorporating that in with some smart home features to sort of manage the electrical in the home. Vehicle chargers, bi-directional chargers, which you'll probably hear about a little more in the forum here, where you can actually hook your car up to the house, the batteries on your car, and run your house on that, and when you have an event. And then energy storage system, which are the batteries, and then also wind generation. We don't have a lot of that discussion about wind generation, but these systems, the house we're building is on a hill and it has quite a breeze, a regular breeze, and taking advantage of that wind, even when it's not sunny, which is nice. It can run at night. So those are some of the components we're going to be looking at installing into the home. So that's all I really have. I just wanted to share that with you. I really appreciate having been asked to be in the forum, and I guess we'll go to the next speaker.
Thanks, Dave. We do have some time for questions. If there's any in the room, I invite folks to go up to the Q&A podium. But if not, Emily, maybe you can check the online questions.
There is an online question, but it's directed more towards BayREN. Although there might be some, let me see if I can figure out. So it says rooftop solar cells and microgrids build resilience against power outages and also lower customers' electric bills. The utilities tried to impose a solar tax last year and are now trying to impose a large fee to discourage rooftop solar and energy efficiency in general. The question says, what is BayREN doing to oppose the utilities that want everyone to use a lot of electricity that uses their long distance transmission lines? I'll type an answer to that question after, but I guess what I would like to add for Dave would be, is there anything that Napa County is doing to make the permitting of kind of solar and battery storage easier or less expensive for customers?
I was gonna there's a question there. I'm sorry. So was there something I needed to respond to on the first question?
Oh, I was saying, I was trying to pivot part of it to you, since I'm sure you have a lot to add. Is there anything that the city of, or the county of Napa is doing to make the permitting process for solar and battery storage easier, or cheaper for applicants?
Yeah, so the actual permits here are on a different cost fee schedule, so they are less to get, and then they're also streamlined. So, you know, as with a lot of the initiatives, we get these systems, we have a person dedicated to it. Permits are issued within a day or two of the application. So we are looking at opportunities for streamlining and you know, the savings of doing that and the encouragement of it. So our board that we have here is in support of trying to get these systems in place and making it more accessible.
Great, thank you. We have another one online asking about the battery fires you mentioned. Can you expand on those or share?
Yeah, I don't know if
reasons?
I mentioned battery fires. I was talking more, I think I mentioned propane tanks. So I'm sorry if there was a confusion there. But we had a number of fires. Yeah, I can't really speak to that. But not associated with batteries.
Okay. And then for your home, are you doing heat pumps that share a condensing unit, or do you think you'll go with ones that have separate units?
I am exploring that right now. That's something that yeah, I forgot the name of the company, but there are companies out there that are now combining that unit. I think that is a wonderful idea, because you are taking full advantage of that hot and cold out of the system, to either, you know, when you're in the summer and you're trying to cool your house, you can actually use the heat that's coming off the condenser to then heat your water heater. So that's a great thing. I'm hoping that pans out for us.
And Emily, looks like we got one question in the room.
Yeah, hi, Dave. I just had a question about, we've talked about the building of your home before, but I'm wondering about the permitting and installation process of the small scale wind generation on site. I know we hear about solar and battery, and I'm excited to hear about the vehicle to grid or vehicle to house charging as well, but interested in the wind generation.
So I'm exploring that. We're going to have a photovoltaic system on the house. And so to maybe supplement that, we are looking at having a small wind generator. They are similar to that of photovoltaic, where you're supplying something right onto your grid of your house. So that's the trick. I'm not seeing that's a newer thing for homes. You don't see a lot of them, but because of where we are, we're actually on a hill, on a ridge, and there's a regular wind that occurs there. So taking advantage of that wind is something I really want to go down the road. So I'm early in that investigation. One thing I'd like to circle actually back with the forum when we get our house complete, because then I will have, you know, a better idea how things went. It's a little early for me to chime in on how well everything went, but I certainly would be willing to circle back and kind of share my experience.
One other quick question for you, Dave. If there was a question about shared condensing units for the heat pumps as opposed to having like one compressor rather than two separate ones. And I think you'd said that you looked into that. Could you talk a little more about what you found? Because I think that's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I've just I was right now I'm in talks with a company, and I can share that with everybody in the chat. I can go look it up, but they basically they're using CO2 for the refrigerant, which my understanding is a new approach that increases the efficiency of the heating and cooling coils. And so when I was looking at that, I found out that there was some systems where there's a shared component. So you're going to go in and order this not at an HVAC, the traditional HVAC unit. That they're actually going to bring in sort of the plumbing component of this, which is the water heater, into the system, and it's taking full advantage of, like I said, mentioned earlier, that condenser, that a single condenser on your property, and then using the heating and cooling features of that to run those both. So basically, you would have an air handler in your attic or in your basement or somewhere in your home that would move the air, and then also you'll have your water heater, which will be basically a tank, that will then have the lines going to it, to the condenser that exists most likely outside. So that's kind of how the system works. But I'd be glad to share that particular company that's doing that. There's not a lot of them yet with the forum.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave. Good luck on building your home. And yeah, I think we would like to hear how it went.
I did see there was a question there regarding hardening buildings and preventing combustion from wildfire blown embers. I can certainly quickly speak about that.
Sure.
So the codes have really evolved in that area, particularly areas that are we consider WUI, but it's really something everybody ought to be looking at when they're resiting their home or building a home, is hardening those buildings. We're right in the middle of an insurance crisis statewide, as far as a lot of companies are dropping. But one of the things that does help you with those to get insurance is having your home hardened. And when I say hardened, that means that the materials that you're using on the exterior of that building are less resistant to fire. So everybody may have heard of hardy board is one example. It's a material that it doesn't burn as well. It will burn, everything burns, but it's resistant to embers. And then you have your venting on homes. You're required to have venting in an attic unless you have a special system that you've installed, ventless as we call it. But most homes have vents. You'll see those little sort of bird holes on the top of your around your house. Those are vents to the attic, and then usually there's an attic, like a ridge vent or something installed in your attic, so you get air circulation through your attic. Those have really come along where those are fire resistive, where if an ember flows into that vent, it actually will close up when it comes into contact with heat and fire. So there's a lot there to do on a home to make it more fire resistive, and it really does help with your insurance too. It does. I mean, it prevents them. We saw so many homes go up because they simply the embers would just blast against the house. It was the wind event that and then those embers would go up into the attic and ignite all that wood that's up in the attic. So and then the house would go up. So having a dispensable space around the home, super important. And then also having these sort of materials installed on your home, Class A roof as well, which is a fire resistant rated roof, are really important. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again, Dave. Let's give him a hand here in person for that.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move on. So we're gonna basically, Dave, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is that was our keynote presentation, kind of setting the stage. Dave is a CBO. We really wanted to hear that perspective of building an all-electric home in a rural area. And so yeah, now that the table is set, we're going to move in to our first section, which is on home scale resilience. So the next